Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to show you how to analyze time series. I'm going to use one dataset prepared by one of our students who was trying to find out if mergers and acquisitions and their value, their overall value in Great Britain in individual years was influenced by a business cycle or the stage of the business cycle. For the mergers and acquisitions, we got from one of the agencies in Great Britain data for the overall value, and then for the business cycle we were thinking of what kind of data to use, so we went to Eurostat and found data for economic sentiment for a few more years than we have the value of the mergers and acquisitions, and in a few minutes I'm going to show you why. Then we have the gross domestic product and how was it developing over years. And we also have interest rates from Bank of England. And we think that, economic sentiment, well, that's how people are optimistic about future and if they are going to expand their balance sheets, if they are going to make investments. And, we can reasonably think that it influences how many mergers and acquisitions are happening in the economy. Interest rates, well, that has huge influence on how much money is available and how much money costs, at what interest rates you can borrow. So you can expect that interest rates also have influence on how many mergers and acquisitions are happening in the economy. And gross domestic product, well, that's the measure for the business cycle itself. So how do you find this relationship? So first problem you have is you don't really know, if these data, these years, they will be in perfect sync with each other, because merger or acquisition of another company, it takes time. Usually the decision to make an acquisition is only the first stage. It then goes on to a due diligence, then there's a negotiation. There can be some defensive tactics against the merger or acquisition. Anyway, it can take up to years before the merger is finalized and shows in statistics. So you can probably expect that that the years before the acquisitions happens are probably more influential than the year itself on the value. There's going to be a time lag between one data set and the second data set. So, but how do you figure out how the influence actually works? Well, first we'll try to calculate kind of randomly the correlation coefficients between the mergers and acquisitions and all of these factors, and we'll find out where where the highest correlation is, and that's probably going to be the explanative factor. So in this table we have a time 0 is no difference, time -1 is difference of 1 year, and goes on till all the way to 5 years. And then you have economic sentiment, interest rates, and GDP. So let's try. First, you'll use the function which is called correl, =correl. Press on it, and asks you for nothing else than 2 arrays. So for economic sentiment, first array, it really doesn't matter which one is which, because we're asking for R, the coefficient of determination, and it's actually negative. Well, that's a disappointing. We don't really want to see that. I'm going to do the same thing for these 2 arrays. I'm going to be lazy. I'm going to fix this array over here, Control F4, just F4. It will add these dollar signs, so it will not change. And then Control C, Control V. So now the interest rates and the GDP and the volume or value, overall value of mergers and acquisitions, and with the GDPs again negative. Very strong correlation with interest rates, as you would expect, but with the economic cycle, these two variables, which actually have more to tell about business cycle, it doesn't really show. It actually show very, very adverse relationship, and that's not something we would expect or like to see. So what I'm going to do is to copy it down, and I have to then and then I have to adjust the fields. So for -1, I want to have it -1. So basically, this array will correspond with this array, which is moved by 1 year up. And indeed, the positive relationship. And I'm going to delete this data because I'm going to do it a little bit differently. And again, copy it to the right. The relationship with interest rates is going down a little bit, but with the GDP, we have a also positive relationship. And keep doing, keep changing the fields. So now I want to have move by 2. All right. Move by 3. It's really important that you do it correctly. Move by 4. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to be easier. Again, I want to have, so basically these two arrays are, out of sync, or they are, I start 4 years before this array, and this one is really high now. Five, and the same thing over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now it's going down a little bit. So this, the problem with this data set is, and with any time series always, there's only this, especially if you measure in years, to kind of like remove the volatility which mergers and acquisitions usually have. It's really usual that one quarter there'll be a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and second one there just wouldn't be almost any, because the numbers of them are not so high. So, and it might be a matter of total coincidence. So for mergers and acquisitions, we kind of forced to use yearly data, and because of that we have only 15 data points, and that's a very small sample. So I'm hoping that the relationship is going to be so strong that it's going to show up even with such a small number of data points. So we can see that the relationship is going up, then it's going down, and for some reason goes up again, and then down again, and down really rapidly. So this might be, to a certain level, coincidental. I'm going to copy it to the left, and over here, the relationship with the interest rates is going down significantly, and with GDP, it deteriorates even faster, and it goes kind of goes. That's why I'm thinking that this number over here might be coincidental. So which year which I'm going to choose? Well, if I'm going to use economic sentiment, I'm probably not going to use GDP because it just doesn't seem to have much of an influence. But the economic sentiment, or which basically measures how optimistic the managers of companies are, that's probably going to be much more telling. These numbers are higher than the GDP. Also, I can't really use economic sentiment and GDP because they correlate really strongly with each other, and there is something called multicollinearity issue, and so I can't really use them both at the same time. So I'm going to use the economic sentiment and interest rates as the second variable, and I'm going to use the -2, the lag of 2 years, basically saying most likely most of the managers decide to merger with another company or acquire another company 2 years before the actual process is finalized and shows up in statistics. So let's see. I have another table prepared over here, so which will be the value of the merger acquisitions and two arrays of data which will be moved by 2 years. So copy it over here, and now I want to move the economic sentiment moved by 2 years. And the same thing with interest rates. Control-C, Control-V is the command to copy. And now I have the data set prepared. So all I have to do is run the regression. To run the regression, you have to make sure that you have the analysis tool pack installed. And to do that, you want to go to Options, there's Excel add-ins, Go, Analysis Toolpack, click it in, go. And if you do have it, if you have it already clicked in, then in data, there's this button over here, which is called data analysis. We're going to choose it, choose the regression, okay. Y range, it's going to be our dependent variable Y, so value of mergers and acquisitions. X range, you include both of the variables, both of the x's, both of the independent variables. Click in because we highlighted the labels as well. If you don't click in labels, it will show up error because it will think that this is also a value and that the label is also a value, and it will just tell you that there is some non-numerical data included and can't calculate the regression. And then confidence interval, well, there's only a few points, so I'm going to be kind of pessimistic and just have it at 90. That means I'm going to calculate the confidence intervals with like higher degree of uncertainty, but 90 is still very presentable result. Where do I want my results? I want them over here. And that's it. Click OK. And here we go. And that's our results. First of all, R-square. It can be always interpreted as percentage because you know that R-square is a ratio between explained part of the number or location of the number or explained error divided by total error. So you can basically always say that 51% of how many how many mergers and acquisitions are happening is determined by only two factors: economic settlement and interest rates. 51% is already pretty high numbers. So, if you have just these two things, so you can basically very, very, very confidently say that 51% of, the value of merger acquisitions is determined by the business cycle. Very much presentable result, but we'll get to the factors themselves. So first of all, you examine the p-values. Economic sentiment, the p-value is 0.06 or 0.07, which means that there is something like 3.1% chance of, 6.9% chance of false positive, 6.9. So you are only 93% certain that this relationship exists, but 93% confidence is actually pretty good. Definitely presentable result. And as always with slopes, you always look at the confidence intervals. It goes over 0 at 95% certainty. Well, we are only 93% certain. That's why it goes over 0. That's why we can't really say that the influence exists, because it potentially could be 0. But at 90, it doesn't go over 0. So we can say, yes, this relationship exists with our certainty of 90% or 93 if you want to be more exact. And interest rates, well, the p-value is really small. It's smaller than 1%. So this is always, percentage in but not structured or not formatted as percentage. So it's actually 0.7%. So again, 0.7% chance of false positive. And that means that we are pretty certain we are more than 99% certain that this relationship exists and that interest rates in fact do influence how many mergers and acquisitions are happening. And well, the impact, these are the slopes. Again, this should be a result of your dissertation if you put this into your dissertation and present these results exactly as I did now. I can promise you that that's basically all you have to do, and your dissertation is going to be good. And I have some really nice and really sophisticated methodology included in there. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope everything was clear. If not, and you have any questions, just contact me throughout Canvas. I'll be very happy to help. See you next video.